Let me go across to Smita Prakash, and because Smita, you're part of the newly constituted Press Accreditation Committee, and I just wanted to ask you about the Editors Guild's attack on the constitution of this committee that you're a part of, as well as the reconstitution of the Press Council of India. They've in fact questioned its independence and ability to play neutral umpire. Smita, how do you see this? You've been an experienced journalist for so long. Now organizations like the Press Council and this accreditation committee are coming under, huge fire and question marks being raised.
Look, I'm not anybody to answer as to why I got selected. That is something that you have to ask Ms. Irani, or you have to ask somebody from the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. I can only say that I have 29 years of experience in journalism. I'm the only woman editor of a news agency for several years. In fact, there is no other woman news editor. So, maybe I've been chosen for that. I really don't know why I have been chosen. And now that I've been chosen, I don't expect that my role is going to be anything of a policeman, if that's what, one of the sound bites that you ran, saying that people with dubious credentials have been, why? Just because my father is not an information and broadcasting secretary, or father-in-law is information and broadcasting secretary? Is that the reason that the journalist concerned had to question my credentials of being in the Press Council? No, I mean, this is weird. As far as self-governing is concerned, we are all trying to govern ourselves. We do not want the government to come and tell us what is fake news and what is not fake news and lay down rules and regulations. That having been said, worldwide, every government now is very scared after Cambridge Analytica, and you know that EU is also thinking about it, America is thinking about it, but the last thing we want is policing by the government. Our freedoms have been won with great sacrifices. Mr. Shourie was out here. Many of us joined journalism because of what we saw Mr. Shourie do. But it really scares me that, at this stage, Mr. Shourie is just plugging a website. Fantastic. Alt News does great stuff. It's done stuff against my agency too. And despite that, I say that there is room for an Alt News. There's room for a Wire. There's room for a Scroll. But there is also room for other kind of news, which is not something that you may agree with. Partisan politics, partisan journalism exists, whether we believe it or not. And to discredit anybody else's journalism and say only one website does good journalism, or only one channel, or only one newspaper does good journalism, rest is all partisan, I'm sorry, we all try our best. As far as fake news is concerned, we have all been victims of fake news simply because television has become all about live broadcast, and in such a situation it is extremely difficult for us as editors to check it, because it goes live on television. It is a mold that might need to be broken.
No, just a quick follow-up question to that. I don't think the problem is with, let's say, news websites or newspapers that have a particular ideology. Of course, there are different organizations that exist with perhaps different ideological leanings. I think the problem is when something that is out and out fake, like postcard news, gets defended by BJP members of parliament, and I personally don't think arresting the owner of that website was the right thing to do. I feel that it sets a very dangerous precedent, and we have to find other ways to punish those who peddle fake news. But I think the problem is just with fake news, people who intentionally put out news with the intention to mislead, with the intention to create trouble.
I get that, but if somebody if he works as a journalist, whether in a website or mainstream media, and he's intentionally promoting hate crimes, if he's intentionally encouraging hate crimes or participating in it, then an arrest is warranted. I disagree that somebody, just because he's a journalist, should not be arrested. I'm sorry, whether he's accredited or not, if it is proved that he is encouraging hate crime, he needs to be put behind bars, and there has to be an inquiry whether he was guilty of that or not. That is not the job of the Press Council or the editorial board or anything like that. That's the job of the police. That's not my job if I'm sitting in the Press Council. That's not the job of the Information and Broadcasting Ministry. That is law enforcement which has to do that.
Well, Mr. Ram, let me ask you, do you believe that this is the last we've heard of attempts to try and control the media, or to somehow to gag the media, to use a stronger word? You think we're going to see more of this?
Yes, Nidhi, I heard your interview with, this conversation with Arun Shourie, my friend, and I fully agree with him that they should not be seen as an isolated instance. They're testing the waters. Of course, this was remarkably stupid. I read the guidelines carefully, and it starts by saying increasing instances of fake news in various mediums. They should correct their English, including print and electronic media. Now, the point is that the manufacturers of fake news are largely the trolls who support the Sangh Parivar, support the Modi government. There's no question about it. And now that, as Arun Shourie pointed out, that doesn't seem to be working. People are resisting. They're getting desperate. And so this is a ridiculous attempt to muzzle the press. And I fully agree that the reconstitution of the Press Council and the Central Press Accreditation Committee, they brought people who are close to the government. These are people, it's not a balanced composition at all. They've drastically altered the composition. And if I were, if I were in their shoes and I had any self-respect, I would resign immediately, not accept the patronage of this government. So it's outrageous that this attempt is being made, but we can't see it as an isolated case. I've known ANI for a long time.
You made a very strong comment there, Mr. Ram.
What is this? Is it the Khilafat movement?
No. So, Smita, what do you think about what Mr. Ram said? I mean, he's basically saying someone like you, not just you, but all of you who
Mr. Ram,
should take a stand and resign.
Mr. Ram is my senior, and I feel very bad in doing this, but what do you expect me to do? Khilafat movement and say that I object and I go onto the streets and become a Kejriwal? What do you expect me to do? If I have been nominated in this council, I am not going to be sitting out there and throwing people out of journalism. No, sir. Please have a little bit of respect for my journalism. I mean, I can't understand. I have worked with you. I have seen you work and learned from you. Don't say this that, my journalism is so bad that I should resign from this council just because you say so.
Well,
okay,
Mr. Ram, go ahead.
I have a lot of regard for ANI. We've known them very well, used them a lot in my days and in my uncle Mr. Kasturi's days. And the idea was not to point any finger at anybody's journalism. The idea was to say, as an independent journalist, you have, if I were you, I would have no place in it. I wouldn't sit here because the whole idea was to entrust this to the Press Council, and this is the committee. You should put up a fight, and I'm glad you spoke out against it. So it's nothing to do with you, but I said generally. Since this has been reconstituted in a radical and drastic way, something very fishy is going on. You shouldn't be part of it. That's my view. You're welcome to disagree.
Well, let me get.
Okay. Nidhi, may I come in?
Okay.
Sir, if I was to just say this, that you have seen what happened in 1988. You have seen what happened in emergency. You and Mr. Shourie have been part of both those movements where you objected to Mr. Rajiv Gandhi and Mrs. Indira Gandhi. It took almost 15 days for Mr. Rajiv Gandhi to roll back. If you remember, sir, at that time ministers used to come and the press used to stand up and say, do you support Mr. Rajiv Gandhi in this? And when the minister wouldn't answer, then the entire press corps would get up and walk out. Whereas this government, sir, within 6 hours has revoked that. Whether it was a drama, whether it was staged, we are second guessing as to what happened, whether Mr. Modi didn't know about it, did know about it, took back. Let's just think back that within 6 hours, Ms. Smriti Irani, or within 12 hours, Ms. Smriti Irani took back this and said we have to rethink about this. If they decide again to bring some kind of draconian measures, then we are journalists. We are obviously not going to accept it, sir.
Okay, Smita,
we have a history in this country of free press.